Well, look, they take their cues from the president. Obviously, people around the president are nervous. They are watching the oil shock. They're watching what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. They're watching the uncertainty in their own base. And they are anxious for this to be wrapped up in as successful a way as possible, as soon as possible. But as you say, we haven't heard from the president exactly what success looks like. It looks like whatever he feels it looks like, right? He says that all the time. He feels something might happen, therefore it's reality in his view. And if he feels they have unconditionally surrendered in Iran, well, that means they have unconditionally surrendered in Iran, even if the Iranians don't think that that's what they've done. So it wouldn't surprise me if he at some point decided to declare victory and go home. But for the moment, he seems intent on going forward and continuing to hit these targets. The question is whether or not he feels any escalation is going to be required to change the nature of the government, because we're not anywhere near regime change, it doesn't look like, and air power is a hard way to achieve that.
Suzanne, we've seen so little out of Iran itself, so little, obviously, from the Iranian people. We don't have access to them. We also have not yet seen the supreme leader. We've gotten what is said to be a message from him saying he's not backing down, and Iran will keep the strait closed to inflict economic pain on the United States and the world. Can you give me a sense, do you have any sense right now of what is happening in the country and how people are doing?
Yes, so thankfully I did wake up to a few messages. Unfortunately, the internet is going out even for people with VPNs. One message I received was there were some serious explosions last night. So I'm just going to read this for you. There were some serious explosions last night and this morning. Knocked me straight out of bed, but I couldn't see any smoke. Everyone thinks they were bunker busters. And so this particular person who I'm speaking to has been trying to evacuate and is concerned about doing so because they've been bombing Basij checkpoints. And yeah, at the same time, they're not getting information, and they haven't seen this supposed so-called supreme leader, haven't heard from him. There have been reports that he's in a coma, reports his leg has been blown off. Many people think he's actually not alive. It would actually behoove the IRGC to not report if he is in fact dead, and that definitely diminishes their authority and shows that they weren't able to protect him and keep him alive, and that gets them closer to regime collapse. But, it is absolutely terrifying for the Iranian people to be beholden to President Trump's feelings of him deciding there's a mission accomplished when it may very well be not a mission accomplished, where they could have been bombed and had so much death and destruction and loss of life, but still have to go back to living under a regime that will be even more vindictive. In fact, in June of last year, when we saw Israel and the U.S. bomb Iran, I had somebody who at the time was very upset that he was being bombed message me when they stopped and said, "What is Trump doing? Why isn't he finishing the job?"
One of the concerns that I think a lot of folks have is when we go into wars, especially in the Middle East, we have a tendency of creating more enemies than friends. And we learned that lesson the hard way after Mission Accomplished, which is part of the reason why we played that. I mean, I don't need to go through the quagmire that we got stuck in and the terrorist cells that were created in the aftermath of the invasion. I know there was obviously the terrorism before that as well. But given the way that this administration is conducting this war and the way that they are parroting it, I wonder what that is doing and whether there's more concern. Let me just give you a couple examples. There's obviously Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, but here's what the White House has been putting up on social media. We played the video game MASH a little bit earlier in the show. Here is them splicing up movie scenes with the Iran airstrikes.
Wake up, Daddy's home.
Welcome home, son.
Strength and honor.
Strength and honor.
What will you do without freedom?
Mavericks inbound.
You can't conceive of what I'm capable of.
Finishing this fight.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
I am the danger. Time to find out.
Maximum effort.
Here it comes. Now end this.
Flawless victory.
Jake, on the first day of this campaign, this war, the U.S. appears to have bombed a girls' school based on old intelligence, according to reporting here at MS Now, and killed more than 100 kids. And at the same time, the administration is putting out these social media messages, making it seem like war is super fun and super entertaining. How's that going over in Congress?
Well, war is hell, and we know that. And the rubber's going to meet the road, Katie, in the next couple of weeks, because they're spending $1 billion a day. $1 billion a day. I had James Lankford, who's a member, Republican from Oklahoma, who's a member of the Intelligence Committee, and who is a key Republican on a lot of issues, but was talking about how so there are nations in the world who don't spend $11 billion a year. We're spending $11 billion in about 10 days. And at some point, I know Trump says we have unlimited ammunition, we have unlimited means by which to conduct this war. We don't, right? We don't. The White House is going to come in the next couple of weeks to Congress and say we need 50, 100, 150, $200 billion to continue prosecuting this war. And guess what? They are going to need Democrats. They are not going to be able to do this on their own. Almost certainly not in the House, and definitely not in the Senate unless they use reconciliation, which I think is a bank shot for them to do. So the more content they put out like that, the less serious it makes it seem that they are. And I think the lack of public hearings, this kind of stuff, the shifting explanations doesn't do them any good. I mean, it might get them retweets, but I don't think it does them any good from an internal vote counting political perspective.
Does anything turn the tide in Congress? I know Democrats are, largely against this, not all, but largely against this. Largely, yeah. Anything turn the tide for Republicans?
I don't know. For Democrats, I don't think so, Katie. I mean, here's what I would say. I've asked a bunch of Democrats over the last couple of weeks, or last couple of days and weeks, like, could you vote for a supplemental? Is there any situation? And they've basically said no. Like, even if they loaded up with, like, California wildfire assistance, which, by the way, they never passed, weapons for Ukraine, I don't know. There's a million different things they could ask for. I don't think there are going to be 7 Democrats who are going to vote to fund this war, which effectively that's what this is, right? This is a proxy vote for authorizing the war in Iran, in both chambers. I don't think with the slim majority in the House and the need for 60 in the Senate, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I asked Leader Jeffries about that a couple days ago, and he was pretty circumspect. He said he would wait for the caucus to weigh in on it, but he didn't seem excited about the prospect. Suzanne, in terms of sentiment within Iran, you mentioned that one person who wanted the U.S. to finish the job before. And I know they don't have internet. I wonder how much of the outside world and America's treatment of this war is getting to them, and whether, do they hate America more today than they did 2 weeks ago? Are they happy to see the regime under fire? Anything on that?
Unfortunately, the tide is actually turning against Trump, when it wasn't the case when the bombing first started, because they thought, okay, Trump finally actually, put his money where his mouth is, so to speak. But a couple of things really didn't go down well. One was the comment that he made about the map of Iran is not going to look the same after this war. That really did not go down well. And also these videos and comments about saying that he's happy to kill Iranians, because it looks like he's not distinguishing between Iranians and members of the Islamic Republic. So, information warfare is a major part of warfare, and the Iranian regime is actually playing it really well themselves. I don't know if you saw, but there was this video of a missile with a message on the missile that said, "For the victims of Jeffrey Epstein." Now, it was an old image and it was AI generated, but this thing spread like wildfire. People were helping spread IRGC propaganda. So when it comes to the information part of this war, the White House is steadily losing.
Yeah, what about the other side of this? Not just this. We are being. How do I put this? The Iranian drone capabilities are showing that American counterattacks, American defensive systems can only do so much, Peter. And the Wall Street Journal made this point today. And ending Iran war quickly carries big risks for the U.S. and allies. Quote, this war hugely damages U.S. standing in the world, which means that China has much more scope to establish its own standing in the Middle East and the global South generally, said Stephen Sang, director of SOAS China Institute in London. Meanwhile, everyone is observing that Iran has, at best, a middling military capability, and the Americans can't take them out. Is this ricocheting around the White House at all?
Well, look, I think what they would say is patience, right? I mean, it's been about 2 weeks. If you go back and look at history and you look at other air campaigns, the United States bombed Serbia for 78 days in the Kosovo War before Milosevic finally backed down. The bombing in Kuwait and in Iraq, when Iraq first invaded Kuwait back in 1991, I think that went for 42 days or so before they went in by ground. So it can take a little bit of time. Air power is not perfect. Air power is remarkably devastating, but at the same time, it's different than having troops on the ground. And President Trump clearly doesn't want to have at least large number of troops on the ground at this moment. And so you do what you can from the air, and you try to maintain security for your side as much as you can and minimize the casualties for your allies and your own bases. At the moment, I think the Israelis had expected this to go on for about 4 to 6 weeks. At one point, the president had used that same time frame. It wouldn't surprise me if that's where we end up. One other factor to keep in mind, somebody pointed out the other day, the president's about to go to China to have a meeting with Xi Jinping. It's possible he might want this to be done by then so that they can have a conversation that's not focused entirely on Iran, because China obviously has a great deal at stake with Iran and its energy supplies. So we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different factors at play here. And as you heard the president say, it's not clear what strategy he's pursuing when he's only following his feeling.